Awesome. Okay. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Happy Monday. This is the last week of the hackathon building period. So we're building steam, building momentum. You're all doing great. We have 114,000 registered builders for this hackathon. So we are, yes, round of applause to you. We have some really exciting stuff coming this week. We'll be, posting some exciting things coming up, building that hype. So stay tuned for that. Also, we are going to be doing some sessions. So today, this is our first installment of one of our Sentry sessions. We're going to be learning about debugging and monitoring today. Tomorrow, we're going to be focusing on UI, user interface, polishing that up. And then Wednesday, we're going to be focusing on user experience. So, if you've been following along, seeing our clips from our judges spotlights, every judge has said, I want to see something polished and, give a good user experience. So if you're like, what does that mean? How do I do that? We're going to be covering that in these sessions. This is your first time joining. Welcome. These will be recorded and put on our YouTube channel after they are done recording. We're going to be taking questions. So throw your questions in the chat. Our most active chat is YouTube. If you're on another platform, we'll be posting all the links in X and LinkedIn and all that stuff as well. But YouTube is a pretty active. Okay, enough yapping here. Okay, so to get started, we have with us Jelani. If you joined the Hackathon News Network last week, you recognize Jay. Welcome back, Jay. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me back. Appreciate it.
And Cody is going to be joining us. Cody is the head of developer experience at Sentry, and he's going to be walking us through all things Sentry. So let's kick it off. Cody, if you want to get us started here.
Yeah, sounds good. Excited to meet with everybody. Excited to show you guys some stuff. I think it's such a cheesy thing to come on and be like, oh, I'm Sentry. Let's talk about monitoring. And so I really want to make this more of you're building in a hackathon. Let's be realistic about what we're building, how we can use Sentry to monitor stuff in an interesting way for this use case. I think we all know production systems have to be monitored. And there's probably not a lot of selling that story to really do here. But I think there are some really cool ways that you can use things like Sentry inside of these types of projects that make it really good to help debug problems. And really, I just want to spend the next hour showing you some tricks, or next half hour-ish showing you some tricks on how I use it inside of my projects. I'm a huge Bolt user. I'm probably in Bolt, honestly, at least once every other day, some weeks every day. I do a lot of customer repros in there when I'm working with customers to fix problems. A lot of times build out the first version of the application in Bolt to go and try it out. And so there's definitely a lot of things that I do as far as staging up my Sentry environment inside of Bolt and using it to make sure stuff is working right and start to see how users see things inside of the app. So I want to take you through a little bit of that. We're going to spend almost the entire time actually in product playing with things. There's no slides in this. This is all hands-on. And so my goal is for you to walk away with some ideas on how to actually use this and really how to find resources to let you go and use this inside of your projects. We have a pretty generous free tier, and then also as part of the builder pack with Bolt, you can get a pretty large amount of Sentry time on it. So go sign up, go check it out. I'm in Discord, so you can find me at Cody D'Arkland in Discord. I'm on Twitter at Cody D'Arkland. I love interacting with the community, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions, anything that's weird. My whole team focuses exclusively on user feedback and making sure that the developer experience of Sentry is really good. So if there are sharp edges or problems that you're finding or things that just aren't working how you want, I actively want to know about those because we're going to go chase them down.
Cody, what is Sentry for those who don't know before we get into it?
Yeah, I was just about to fire up the UI and jump in and show that, but Sentry got its start really as an error monitoring platform, but it's grown into a lot more. And so it's really a whole application monitoring platform at this point. And when I say monitoring, I'm talking about things like errors, things like traces, things like replays, things like logging. Our shtick in the space is really making sure that we have a good developer experience around this, that we want the people who are pushing code and actually managing these applications to be the ones jumping in. Whereas a lot of other platforms focus on an operations team managing this and having a dashboard up on a big screen above the knock that's making sure everything is like running good inside of an environment. This is really designed for the people who are building the applications and shipping them to like know what's happening inside of the app. And so it's really good for monitoring things right inside of the application and having good like views into how it's performing.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah.
Let's get into the UI and make it real, make it look, make a little bit more sense.
Nice. Yeah, let's do it.
I'm going to do the ever so risky sharing of my entire screen. The most terrifying thing anyone can do on a live stream.
With thousands of people watching.
Thousands of people watching. Let's go. Let's do it. So just kind of setting the stage a bit. I have a project that I started hacking on a few minutes ago, just a little code snippet app to store code snippets. It's not backed by a database or anything right now. I was trying to get that wired up before the call. We are where we're at, but it does work locally. I wired this up as a Next.js application for a lot of the new people. A lot of times when you spin up an app inside of Bolt by default, it's just a React app. I made this Next.js so I'd have a front end and back end APIs that I could work with. So there's a little bit of depth to this. We're going to work inside of this a little bit, but I want to do just a quick tour of what is Sentry and how does Sentry work. So again, you have a free tier of this that you can come in, you can sign up for, and you can use forever. And then I think as part of the builder pack, you get about 6 months of the business tier. So you get it's either team or business. That is a little upgraded and gets you a little bit more features overall. When you set up a Sentry project, so Sentry is broken into different projects. You can think of those as different applications or tiers of an app. You get dropped into this feed view here, which is all of the issues that are coming to your environment. You can think of issues as things happening inside of your app that are generally not very good. So these are all errors that are happening inside of an app that I built over the weekend that I was hacking on.
Cody, can you zoom in real quick?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I should realize it was a lot smaller than I wanted to be. Or a lot, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So these are all issues that have happened inside of the environment. I can come in here and play with date ranges and get a little bit further out. I usually keep mine on the last 24 hours just so I can see what's happening. When I jump into these, Sentry is all about giving you context into what's happening inside of your application when a problem happens. A lot of times just this error message up here is not everything. We want to know a lot more about what kind of app or what kind of user was coming in and accessing this. What did it look like when they were experiencing the problem? What do the headers look like coming through? And so there's a lot more information that we capture as part of a Sentry issue. Issues tend to be kind of the foundation of Sentry. They're sort of like the entry point for people and where people usually start, because ultimately you want to know when something breaks and how to go and fix it. We're going to spend a little bit of time inside of issues, but we're going to spend a lot more time looking at things like logs and replays. So logs are a beta feature. You can access it. They're an open beta, and these let you push logs into Sentry that your application is doing, or things your application is doing as logs into Sentry. And so I can come in, I can grab a specific range, and I can see a bunch of detail in here around things that are happening at any given moment. So I can see, for example, a user object here from a login. This is because I was rewriting OAuth last night on this app and was debugging it. So I have a bunch of logging set up specifically for OAuth. Replays let you see the actual interactions of a user inside of your app. So if I go in and I launch this replay, I can see exactly what a user was seeing inside of the app as they clicked around. So that's really useful for being able to understand what a user was doing when something went wrong. I'm going to show you how to change the settings on this so that you can see both the text behind this, because right now we block out PII data, but also how to make it so it captures it all the time, so you can see things that are happening inside of an app at all times. So again, replays are really useful inside like hackathons. We're going to dive into how to use those a little bit. And then traces. Traces are really good for understanding the communication flow throughout your application. So for example, I have this database call down here that's happening on my backend. If I click in on this, I can see the overall flow. So this flow was part of the login operation. So it logged in, it did an auth, it made some calls in here. Part of that call was to the database. And then after that, it went in and did a projects call to get all the projects for this application. So tracing lets me see all those individual steps of communication throughout my app, both from the front end when it loaded, all the way through the back end interactions. So the combination of logs, traces, and replays are stuff that I use all the time inside of projects. Errors I definitely use, but those just kind of come with the platform anyways. And you're not always writing things that are like breaking in the smaller hackathons, right? They're breaking, but they're breaking usually just for you. I use the other three things when I'm just regular debugging and building even locally. So we're going to jump in and get this set up so you can see what it looks like from scratch, because that's a little bit more useful than the tour that I just showed. But that was the high level of what Sentry gives you and what you get out of this.
There are some questions about like, why should someone care about this? And the main thing that I want to highlight here is like, if you're building an app and you're not necessarily a developer, or you're someone who doesn't have coding experience, you could use Sentry to spot those problems and then tell Bolt like, hey, I'm seeing this problem. Can you help me fix it?
Yeah, the whole, for example, like to that point, coming into like the issue view here and hitting one of these and grabbing, this is a bad example because it's the most vague error message that's ever happened. But I can come in and grab error message or other data and just paste it in a Bolt for help. I can also, on some of the trial accounts, you can have access to the AI agent over here, Seer, and you can pull down information from inside of this and actually paste it into Bolt to have it go fix also. And so like being able to find out exactly what's breaking and exactly where it's breaking is kind of the helpful thing here, and being able to use that to go and fix problems.
Yeah. Someone also said, how is this different from console.log?
Totally. So console.log is only going to show obviously on your console, or on the console where the application is actually running at. So for example, on a React app, that runs client side. So when we say client side, in this case, we mean on your system. If I give you my application and tell you, oh, go check it out, and I put a bunch of console log statements in there, I'm not going to see those on the client side. If I have a server backend, I can see those in the server logs, but I'm not going to see the full context. So like if I was debugging locally, sure, console log helps a ton, but there's also a lot of operations that'll clear the console logs. So when the application reloads, for example, then those console logs are lost. When you're pushing them as log entries in here, they show up and they stay searchable inside of Sentry. And you can set up the integration to actually automatically send console logs into Sentry, so they're searchable always. And so it gives you just a central place to gather all of these up alongside the details of who actually sent those over. And so if only one person out of 1,000 people are throwing this problem you're seeing where that console log is firing, that might not be that big of a deal. But if 1,000 of those users are all having that same problem and you're seeing that exact same log statement, it's very helpful for debugging. It's very helpful to be able to copy and paste the log information into Bolt and say, hey, I'm seeing a bunch of users have this problem. Here's the message they're seeing on their side. Help me fix it. And so console log is great for local and for only what you see, but having these aggregated in a place you can search is a lot more useful.
Yeah, in simple terms, I would say it's basically a way to monitor multiple people, right? Like many people who are using your app. And then you can identify those issues inside of Sentry and then fix those issues, especially if multiple people are having those issues.
Totally. All right, let's fire this up. So I'm going to come into Bolt now. And I could come in here, and since it's an Next.js application, I could just text and tell Bolt, hey, go install Sentry. And a lot of times that'll get pretty far. There's a little bit cleaner of a way to do it in this case, though. I want to highlight Sentry docs. I'm going to zoom in on this because it's way small. So docs.sentry.io. We really focus on this side on making like the steps actionable. And so you're not having to like dig through a bunch of files to figure out what to do. Since I'm building an Next.js app, I'm going to come in here. And it's going to give me a wizard that I can run inside of Bolt. So I'm going to copy this text down here, this install step, and I'm going to come into the code tab, and I'm going to hit this terminal option down here on the bottom. From here, I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to go ahead and run it. And this is going to guide me through the Sentry setup. And it's going to integrate it totally inside of this project with all like the files that needs to copy, all the context. And it's even going to go in and wire it up to a project for me inside of Sentry. So I'll say yes to this first one. and I'm going to choose this Sentry SaaS option. Sentry is an open source monitoring tool. You could host it locally if you wanted to. You could pull it all down and run it inside of your environment. It's pretty advanced to do. In our case, we're just using the web version, the SaaS version. So we'll hit this. I do have a Sentry account. And then I'm going to copy this URL here. I'm going to paste it in so that we can go in and start setting up. So I'll choose my organization. So in Sentry, you have an organization that all of your projects live in. We'll zoom in on this some more. And I'm going to create a new project. You can see I have a huge problem because I create a lot of projects inside Sentry. So I'm going to create another new one. And I'm going to go Bolt, Next.js snippets, just to keep things clear about what it's doing. Now, if you were building, right now I'm building a Next.js, so it's just a Next.js application. If you were building something that had a front end and an API separately, so we call that a multi-tier application, you'd want a project for each one of those. Next.js is great because it's all contained inside of one, so I just need to create one project here. Now, what's really cool about this is that just ran, and if I go back into Bolt, it actually pulls in that context that I just gave it, or that information, and it pulls in all the connection details for Sentry to actually go in.
Zoom in on that, Cody. That bottom.
I can't grab just that specific bottom very easily, but I've tried to make it bigger.
That's better. Yeah.
I'm going to say yes to this one to send everything through Next.js. This does typically increase like the server load overall because we're sending all traffic through. I'm doing that because I'm doing this inside of Bolt. If I went in and clicked this deploy button up here, I would say no here because it'll run normal and work fine. But for the sake of this, I'm going to say yes for now. I'm going to tell it to turn on tracing. I'm going to tell it to turn on session replay. I'm going to have it create an example page that we can use to test out and make sure everything's working correctly. And I'm going to say no to the CI/CD step for now. So that's all done. And now if we go into our application, there's a couple of things that have been created inside of here. So we can see the Sentry server config. It's been set up with the connection string. You don't need to memorize this. This is just being pulled in from Sentry. And it's configuring this for each part of the application. Now, this part's a little bit important, and I want to highlight it. Because we're testing some stuff out, I'm going to bump up the session replays to 100% of sessions to record. So I changed that from 0.01 or 0.1 to 1.0, so 100%. This means that every session that comes into the app will record a session replay for it. That's useful for things like this where you're debugging and trying to figure out what's happening inside an application when errors might not be happening. We capture 100% of them for errors already. So if there's an error, we're always going to record what was happening in the app at the time. And that should be good to go for us to get started with.
Real quick, so the 100% is only for the demo process, or like what's the difference between the replay session sample rate and then the replays on error sample rate?
Sure. So in this case, like what we're doing here inside of like the Bolt hackathon, I would bump this up so you can see all the sessions coming through. In production, when you have tens of thousands of users hitting, you wouldn't want that because it's going to record every single time. So like this is a percentage. So right here, this is right now it's meant to represent a percentage, but it's 1.0, so 100% of sessions are recorded. This one here, we tend to separate them out. So if I set this as, just for example's sake, if I go back to 0.5, this is going to record a session replay for 50% of sessions that come in. So 50% of them are not going to record, 50% will. But because Sentry really focuses on fixing broken things, so we really want to capture when something breaks and how to fix it, we always set it to 100% for capturing a replay on error. So if there's an error in your app, we're always going to record it. But in this case, 50% of the time, we record it just arbitrarily. But I'm going to set this, in our case, to 1.0. So I'm grabbing session replays every single time regardless so that we can watch, even if users are going in and just browsing around the application. I want to see what menus they're clicking on. I want to see where they might be getting stuck or not a part of my app that I wanted them to use that they're not using, I can get all of that here.
Gotcha. So you just need to change it like once you go to production.
Yeah, I'd switch it back down after production, but I would, during like debugging, I would crank it up here. I would crank it up still to 1.0.
Got it.
So that is all set now. I'm going to go back into my application. I'm going to do a refresh. I'm actually going to refresh the whole browser, which is going to reload the app. That's fine. Usually you don't need to do that. I'm just doing that here to be safe because I don't want to fail the demo live. It's never fun.
Is there anything that you have to do outside of decreasing that percentage when you're ready to deploy to production?
I mean, honestly, you don't even need to decrease that. You're just going to run out of your free tier of replays. Like everything will still work fine. But other than that, no, like it's already configured fully now. Like I could go and hit this deploy button and this would ship out just fine. In fact, if I go, we'll go ahead and just do it for fun anyways, which I did not test beforehand. So now I'm going to go and fail the demoing live thing, but it should just work with all the configurations I put in.
Okay.
So we'll give it a few to go and do its thing there. But in the short term, while that's running in the background, I'll come back into Sentry and I'm going to go to this issue or this filter drop down here. And I created this Bolt Next.js snippets app here. I've got no issues because nothing's breaking because everything was working when we started. I'm going to change this to last hour. Oh, we do have a couple things that are breaking. So a couple things were upset inside of the application. We'll come back to that in a bit. But if I go into things like traces, we can see we're capturing information already. So like in just probably 3 minutes of time, we're already starting to capture information. What's really cool about the traces view, it is a fairly advanced view and there's a lot going on in here, but you can get some cool metrics around how people are using your application. So like if you had a login route, for example, you could come in here, type that in and see all traces that were related to that. So let's use one that, for example, I have data in. We can go to something like shipbuilder. If I wanted to come in and type in login, actually let's do login as a span, of course. Oh, because it's just last 1 hour. There we go. Now this is all traces that have login involved. I can come in and click on this and I can see what it looked like when someone hit that address or hit that page and how long the whole process took overall. Right. And so like you can very quickly get a lot of like good context information around what's happening inside of your application by using the search in here. And you can even come in and start to see like how many of those events happen. So if I came in and said, I want to see how many times there was a page load operation on login. Hold on, like this. I have this span operation here for page load, login. I can come in and do a span operation search for page load. For Grins, I'm just going to grab that. I can see how many sessions were for each one of these, and these are all page load operations, but then I can go and also add in span description. Span.description. Login. And so I can see how many times people hit that login endpoint inside of this window of time. So it gets really useful for being able to dig in and find information about what's happening inside of your application. It's a fun little trick that I use for like finding out if people are hitting the pages that I built or not.
We have a question here. It says, can we create the type of action from a user that we want to track as a metric?
Absolutely. There is some docs on that. If you go into traces for your SDK and do sending metrics, you can see them in here. And I've actually written a set of helpers for this. If you go into the main part for your application, so like Next.js, for example, of your framework rather, and you expand this AI rules for code editors, there's a section in here for grabbing, for building custom spans. You can set up metrics in here that would be carried in. And so that makes it really easy to bring in like different actions that you want to be able to track. You can also do it via logs if you want to, but I would do it as custom traces. We have some videos on our YouTube. I'll share them with Kate. But that can get sent out that talk through how to set that up also. But yeah, you can totally, that's one of the best use cases for it. We call it critical experiences, where we want to measure certain actions people are taking or certain things people are doing inside of the application, like registrations, for example.
Got it. Makes sense.
So we did have an error, womp womp, on the deployment. This is what I get for firing things up without testing first. We're not going to spend a huge amount of time debugging why it's failing right now, but looks like a little Next.js problem. So we'll come back to that at another time. For now, let's focus on getting the rest of the app wired up with the stuff that we wanted to show. So we get the preview.
But we saw it working, so it's already connected to Sentry. So it's
just the deployment failed, and it was really just a Next.js thing on the back. So
something minor.
Yeah. There we go. App is up. So there's a couple of things that I want to do to get this going more. I want to show bringing in logs, and I want to check out replays really quick. So we should already actually have some replays. Actually, first I'm going to come in here. I'm going to create a new snippet. Setting up logging in Sentry. We'll do this as a TypeScript one, and then we'll go paste our code. I'm going to hop into the Sentry docs just real quick so we have some real content. And I'm going to grab this little snippet. So maybe I want to be able to share this snippet with people in the future so that they can set this up for themselves also. Paste this in, add the snippet, and it's created now. So I can come in and copy this, and I can use it elsewhere if I want to, right? Super useful. I love tools like this. So I've done some things here now. If I come in to Sentry, I can go to replays. And I need to switch over to the snippet project that we just built. I've already got one from about 6 minutes ago. We can come in, hit play, and we can watch the initial interactions going. Now it's all masked out because we hide PII data by default, but these are, if you look at how the UI looks like inside of our app itself, well, now without that there, but that is roughly what our application looked like. Now, again, we're blocking all this out because we don't want you to expose PII data, but I can show you how to fix that also, so that it removes all these stars and you can actually see a real view into what the person entered and what data was there. So replays I use a ton inside of these types of projects because it's like nice to be able to see what people are actually doing with your application. So I'm going to come in here. We have this nice AI search inside of Sentry, inside of Sentry docs. So I'm going to ask it, how do I unmask replays in Next.js? And this will give us the updated code snippet to plug in to remove that. So we're going to go into the replay integration, and we're going to set both of these to false. I'll just copy that. We'll head back into our code. We'll go into our instrumentation client for Sentry, and we're going to replace this part with the update. Tab this stuff over a little bit. Why are we upset? Oh, probably don't do that. Oh, oops.
I was gonna say I was gonna tell you that period's there.
Womp womp.
The pesky period.
All right. Pour, copy, and paste. Make sure everything's good. Ooh, what do we get? Oh, because I got rid of that comma off of the end. So angry. Actually, tell it to just go ahead and have Bolt fix that. It's just a syntax problem that I'm missing in here. So
Okay.
Bolt, Bolt should go and fix that because it's just a pretty simple text to fix rather. So meanwhile, we'll go and explore a little bit more.
There's a question about while we were waiting. Someone said, "What does the paid access give you that the free tier doesn't? What extras do you get from the paid plan?"
Sure. So there are a couple like more advanced features. Like there's some dashboarding functionality that gets unlocked in the paid version. You get some more access to the AI agent Seer. There's some alerting that gets added in, I believe, in the higher tier. And then really it becomes a lot about like volume overall of requests coming through. So like, for example, you might get a few million more spans tracked, things like that. A lot of times it's more just volume of things that are being tracked. There are some like minor features like single sign-on and stuff like that. It's more like enterprisey, but we tend to make the free tier pretty generous overall. Any other questions coming through while we're waiting for this to clean up?
Yes. Let's see. We have. There was a question about connecting. Do they have to connect only via terminal?
Terminal is the easiest way to do it. You can ask it, especially on a regular React project, because this is Next.js. There's a lot of like moving parts, so the terminal ends up being a little bit nicer. For like the regular React ones, you could pop in and type it in down here to set up Sentry inside the project, and it'll generally go through and like iterate over and over again on it to get it right. You can also copy that setup. You can go into the docs and copy that initial setup text that I showed before and paste that in. We kind of wired it up to work with the different LLM models pretty well. And so this will help you get set up also. So there's a few different options there, but the terminal one is usually like the most bulletproof because it just runs the wizard and goes and configures it fully. So I generally recommend that, but you can just talk to it inside a Bolt. I've done that too.
And then how, if it's enabled on the client side, like how heavy is it for the application?
Is we keep Sentry very light overall. It's something that we're optimizing on often. It's a common question we get. I don't have like exact values for you, but we keep it pretty light overall, just because it's the monitoring platform. And again, that's something we pay a lot of attention to make sure that it's staying pretty light. So it's a very minimal impact at all, if any noticeable impact at all. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to add a new snippet. You'll notice that we're not getting any persistence because I don't have a database set up. So every time I refresh, it clears out. But I'm going to come in and say logs snippet. Excuse me. I'm going to come in and grab another copy of that setup. We'll drop this in here. Oh, all fields need to be required. Forgot the language. So that's set up now. In theory, let's do it again real quick. Another logs, TypeScript. I'm doing this to create a couple of replays that we can actually go and look at. And so what we had done was cleaned it up so that we would get replay information. We haven't gotten an updated one. It takes a little bit to process them sometimes. Give it a big refresh.
How does this work with the database? If you were to add a database, like can it monitor what's going on in, let's say, Supabase?
Yeah, so while this is reloading, because I just refreshed it, absolutely. What's cool about using Supabase is because of how Supabase is set up and it's Postgres, if you use Supabase with like Drizzle, which is a way of managing databases, you get telemetry coming in automatically. So in my other project that I was showing earlier, this one isn't running specifically in Supabase, but it's still running on a Postgres database, which is very similar, obviously. I'm getting all of my backend queries as part of this. So like all of those database calls are coming through and I can actually monitor how those are performing, which is like really useful because if you come in here and you see these as like very large numbers, a lot of times there's probably something you can do to improve how that's working. Like this is a pretty ridiculous query overall. I am fairly certain that there's something that could be done to optimize this. This is a nightmare, right? We're not going to try to debug this right now on this call, but like there's probably some room to optimize there. But you can definitely come in and see how these are performing. And if you click in on, if you go into like traces as an example, and you go in and you look at the database statement ones, database statement calls, you can come into the traces view and see how long each one is taking to actually run on the database side. So like down here, like this one was 162 milliseconds for that call. And so you can monitor all the way down from like the initial page load and how it's seen by the user, all the way down into the individual database calls that happen behind the scenes.
Does that work with edge functions as well?
Yeah, with edge functions, it should work also. There was like a heartbeat of time where we were having some issues in Next.js with edge functions, where like we were having some struggles with getting those through. But I believe that was fixed, and you should be getting telemetry off of those now.
Nice. And is it as easy as like connecting Supabase to Sentry, or like what's that setup process?
As long as you go through, so for something like databases, as long as you go through the overall setup flow that's in the docs here, it'll actually set it up in such a way that you will get those automatically as long as you have tracing turned on. The big thing that people stumble on is when they do it manually, there's an ordering that has to be done. So for example, when I say ordering, I mean the way we bring these items in. If you don't import it in the right order, it doesn't bring in the monitoring early enough to catch the database hooks, and then you'll start to have problems. But as long as you follow the guide and you follow like the docs will set up the instrumentation for you. The big thing is like making sure that the provider you're using supports it. So like Supabase does, for example, Neon does. And so as long as you're using those, or like another one is if you like deploy on like Railway as an example, those ones do also. And so it's just on Postgres, especially in MySQL, both of those have pretty healthy support overall for sending telemetry. And so as long as it gets pretty technical, but as long as they're sending like the open telemetry data, we tend to ingest it in most cases. So it should just work as long as you go and configure it, as long as you follow the steps.
Cool.
Let's go in. We'll just add another test one real quick. And now, in theory, we should go and see. What I wanted to show was a updated replay that didn't have the masking turned on. It's taken a little bit to show up. These take a little while to process sometimes, especially on systems like this. So we'll come back to that. As we cruise up on the end, I wanted to go and set up logs and show how those work. So if we go into inside that same section, so for example, on our Next.js one, we'll go into logs. We have some code snippets in here for setting it up. This will take you through what needs to be updated to turn it on. And usually you can just paste this into Bolt and it'll run. To keep things going fast, I'm going to go and just do it manually. So I'm going to grab this experiment section. I'm going to head back into Bolt and into the code section. I'm going to go into client and I'm going to paste this in here to turn on logs there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the server side. Save those.
So what are we doing here?
I'm turning on the logs functionality. So like Sentry logs, because they're in beta, we don't turn them on for everybody yet. We will eventually. But right now, because we're still betaing them, you have to turn them on manually.
Got it. So you have to put them in that snippet in both places.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the guides, as long as you follow, again, like if I was to copy and paste this in and just run it in Bolt, it would do it. It just takes a few, and we're cruising up on the end of time. So I don't want to kill time watching it code gen it. So just showing it here to be simple.
Got it.
And now once that's in, you can start actually, instead of using console log, you can use this logger to go and send information. So to make it easy, I'm going to come into my main page load that happens. And I'm going to bring in the Sentry functionality here. Again, if I copy and paste this, it would do all this for us. I'm just doing it manually because it runs a little bit faster that way. So I'm bringing in all the Sentry functionality here. I'm then going to come in and bring in that logger from Sentry. And then we'll do just a fun logger.info. And we'll give it just a fun little message. And now what that'll do is whenever this component loads, it's going to fire that log off. I should refresh. And if we go in here after a few moments, we can see those logs are showing up. Now, what I can do, just to make things interesting, is I can come in here to Bolt and I can say I added Sentry logging to the application. I want to create log entries when new snippets are created. Can you instrument this for me? And Bolt should go scan for where that the Sentry logging was set up, and then update it with this new functionality. And now every time we create a snippet, it should create a log.
Can you just briefly explain to those who are not super technical, like why should you even care about logging, and what does that even do for an application?
Totally. So the cool thing about logging for me is not with Sentry, like Sentry is great at capturing when something breaks, but not everything that air quotes breaks causes an error, right? There are things that happen inside of our applications that you want to know about, but aren't triggering an error. So for example, if maybe someone cancels out of a flow that you built, like you have like a cool a way of uploading photos and people keep canceling out of it, but you don't get good visibility into when people aren't using that, or it's an action that's happening that doesn't trigger an error, but it's something that you might want to know about. You can use logs to track that and see those interactions and see what's happening there. So it just gives more like context into things happening inside of your application. Excuse me. Another one is like different loading states that you might want to show, or different things that happen when the application comes online. Or if you're debugging something like a database, as an example, you might want to console log out all of the data so you can see what it looks like and decide which parts of it you want to grab, right? So like logging just gives you a way to pull more information out from your application about what's happening and actually use it and actually be able to search it, and more importantly, see what other users are seeing from it also. And so like if you want to see like errors show up again pretty easily, but you want to capture debug information, you want to capture environment information, you want to be able to push every time someone saves something inside of your application, you want to be able to see it. Stuff like that.
How do you decide when to apply logs to a part of your application?
I tend to let especially in like the world of CodeGen, I tend to let CodeGen kind of tear loose on it. And a lot of times I'll give it a prompt like apply logs where you think it makes the most sense. And I honestly, like 90% of the time, it does a pretty good job of instrumenting that throughout the application. If I wasn't doing it that way, excuse me, what I would normally do is any action that someone's taking or a thing that I want to see more on, so like page loads, component loads, form submissions, logins, things like that I would normally want to track. Usually I'm going to grab off, or I'm going to do logs around those.
Gotcha.
Excuse me, sorry.
So between logs, traces, replays, you should have a really good understanding of like what's going on in your application at like all times, basically.
Yep.
Nice.
Let's see if those showed up yet. I'm still not showing up on the replay front, so we'll come back to that. So I just added those logs for tracking when they're created. We're cruising up on time, so I just want to do one more quick test to see if those show up, and then we can jump into more questions. So we'll go TypeScript, we'll paste that in there. And let's see if it updated with more logs for us. Sometimes takes a few to come through. Any questions while we're waiting for it to finish loading?
Yeah, there was one that Kate put up before. Kate was talking about any tips to be considered to not exhaust Sentry subscription plan or quotas, like if you're tracing too many logs or things of that nature. Are there any tips there?
You know, I think like for the most part, the free tier is pretty generous, and so you get a lot out of it. And so I wouldn't worry too much in it. I think like what I showed before around the sample rate is really important. and making sure that you're actually like setting that low in production. But as part of like the hackathon, I wouldn't worry about it too much because like it's a pretty significant volume overall. And there's nothing that like breaks when it runs out. It just starts dropping the extra events. Like you won't see more errors, you won't see more logs, you won't see more traces coming through. But I would definitely play with the sample rates inside of here and use those to kind of control the flow of what's happening for the most part. But other than that, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Generally.
Cool.
So I saw what happened and why they're not showing up. And again, fun things in the world of code gen. It went and it added in something called breadcrumbs into the application for logs instead. Breadcrumbs are another kind of we're using these less and less because we have logs now, but breadcrumbs are like the individual action someone takes. And so like right here, it added a breadcrumb for code snippet created. This is a great one that should just be, instead of a breadcrumb, should just be a log entry instead. But because it CodeGen it just used the old version instead, so it used breadcrumbs. And so again, if I came in here and instead I did const logger equals Sentry again, like we had set up before, and I went down to that breadcrumb and I got here and I did logger.info. And instead I did code snippet created. I could do that. I can also do logger.debug, and I can start bringing in some additional functionality that we have to add in structured logging here. So I could say code snippet name is
To be clear, Bolt can do this for us. We don't have to manually code this, right?
We do not have to manually code
The
this.
vibe coders are getting scared.
Yeah, if I just pasted this in up here, so grab this from the text, the logger examples. And actually we'll show that just as the final thing. I'll grab this, and what we'll do is we'll say, instead of the breadcrumbs you set up, use the Sentry logger with this example. Excuse me. Allergies are catching up to me.
I had like an allergy attack this weekend. I was like down for the count. It was bad. I don't know
what's rough is like I'm up in Sacramento and the weather is changing back and forth so much that it's just crushing me.
Yeah. While that's going, someone had a great question up here. Can I use Sentry to see if someone's trying to do something malicious on my site?
Not by default. Like it's not necessarily set up as a security product, but using things like the logging information here, replays. We do capture some light things, like there's some like SQL injection stuff that we try to capture around. Those things will show up, but a lot of times, like I've done some things where like I'll track like the amount of times people try to log in, and I'll send log messages for me on that. And then it's a little bit more advanced, but I'll come in and I'll start setting up things like where they were. We just reordered things. I'll come in and set up alerts around those things, so I can see notifications when things are happening that I don't expect to have happen. There it is, configure alerts. I'll come down here and I'll set up alerts for some of that. And so like not by default, but you can use things like the traces and the logs to set up that stuff so you can track it inside of the app.
Got it. That's super cool and useful for sure.
This is still running an update here. See if it finishes in time. Any other questions that came through while we're waiting for this to update our logger?
Yeah, Andrew says, do we need to consider compliance like GDPR, CAN-SPAN, etc., with Sentry implementation?
So definitely in the light of in the scope of like what we had set up before, the original PII configuration is like overall GDPR compliant because we're not capturing any like specific information out of that. We're just capturing like the UI elements. We're not seeing the text inside. But you do want to pay attention to like laws in your area to make sure that they're covered fine. But like we Sentry's got something like 120,000 active users at any time. There's a lot of apps out there running it, and the default configuration is pretty safe overall. But just make sure you're paying close attention to the laws in your area. I am not a legal entity and should not give legal advice overall.
Makes sense.
So let's see. We got that. It updated all of the logger stuff like we wanted it to. So we can see it vibe coded that out for us. It's using the template like we wanted to. If I go and peek at the code, we should see a bunch more of those the actual log entries in. So log your debug as an example right there. We'll go and we'll create one more snippet. Paste that in. Save that. And we should be able to come in and see those logs now, if not shortly, as it finishes loading up, because those were just plugged in. Sometimes the refresh takes a little bit of time running inside of Vault for it to start sending those over, because the SDK has to spin back up. So it sometimes takes a few. But the code was right and it was instrumented fine, so it's just giving it a heartbeat to get there.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
We have a question here. It looks like, if I understand this right, like, is there a way, if you have a reported bug, is there a way to like basically throw all of your recording at that bug? I think is what this question, or like just emphasize on like one or two kind of specific things.
One more time? I didn't follow.
Can you change logging or tracing level config from the browser, i.e. set it low on production, but maybe set a custom header if you want to test a bug report by a user?
Yeah, so you can. This is the part where it starts to get like a little bit more advanced. And so you'll want to look at, there's for logs, not so much, but especially like the trace sample rate, there's some sampler configurations in the docs. I would pop into docs and ask that question here, and what it'll give you is a block of code that you can use to create conditionals around it. Again, it's a pretty advanced approach, and so like covering it on here is harder to do, but you can definitely tell it to record a specific level of events based on certain characteristics if you want to. I don't think so with logging specifically, but with like tracing, for example, you definitely can. Let's see if we got better logs now. There we go. So there's our updated log showing the new snippet created. I can come in and grab just the text here, plug this in up top, and I can see the total amount of times that log entry has shown up. So if more people were using this, I could watch and see it grow inside of here. If these were API routes, I could see them inside of traces. So it gets really flexible to be able to dive into.
I was going to ask that. You can't see logs as a trace, right? Or can you?
You can see them as part. They are technically traces underneath the hood, but ultimately, what you'd want to see is you'd want to go into like the traces view to see them here. But they are part of the tracing structure overall. You're just going to get different information out of it here, and because of how we set this up on the fly, like it's not as structured very well. It's like if this was for example, like in a real if I was expanding this and building this out more, these would be. That add snippet would call an API behind the scenes, and I would actually track that off of the traces instead of the page load like it's doing right here. I would go and find that, like how many times that API call was hit and how many times that endpoint loaded.
Nice. This is epic, honestly. I think a lot of people who don't or haven't implemented something like this should definitely, just because if you want to build an application and you want to make sure your users are having a good experience, you don't want an app that's failing all the time and you don't have any visibility on like what's actually failing. Use Sentry to implement these logs, traces, replays, etc., just to give you a bit more visibility on what's happening inside of your app.
Yeah, if that was, we obviously went pretty deep into some more advanced topics as we cruise through. But if I was starting, like if I was really into what I saw here and I wanted to go and implement this, where I would start with getting log set up and replay set up. Errors comes along with it. Set those things up and really use that prompt that's on the docs. Like go into either like the Next.js one or the React one. Come right in, grab the rules for the code editor, copy it, and just tell it instrument my app with this configuration, and let it go to town setting all of that up, and just use that configuration, because you'll get a ton of like value out of just using that inside of your hackathon project. And then you can expand it later and add like deeper traces in later and explore some of that later on. But you'll get like immediate use out of the replays and logs functionality, like within the first 10 minutes of using it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is epic. I'm going to be using it myself, honestly. So I have a lot of stuff to do for some of my projects, but this has been really amazing. I think we only have a few minutes left, but if you want to answer a few questions, we can do so. Kate, you want me to just grab some, or you want to put some up?
Yeah, let's see. I think you answered this one, but we have a question about Sentry following webhooks. Stripe webhooks. Is that possible?
Like sending webhooks out from Sentry?
Yes.
We do support some webhooks inside the platform. You'll want to explore around. I would definitely jump into the docs on that. I think it just depends on what specific webhook that you want to be able to catch off of. There's some things we keep inside the platform, or some things we send out. It just depends on what you're looking for. But we do support webhooks.
Sweet. Okay.
If I refresh this, you can see I unmasked all of the PIs, so you can actually see the flow that I took when I created that a second ago. This is like one of my favorite features of the product.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. That's epic. Also, that gives you like more information on what people are actually using your app for. So, like, I always tell people, like, where your app starts today is not where it's necessarily going to end, because you're going to talk to users, you're going to get feedback, and you're going to be making modifications. So this just gives you more insight on what people are actually using your app for, and then that kind of it will guide you on what you should actually be building.
Yeah, I joke with people a lot that like a lot of times we build our apps in a way that we want someone to use it, but then people use them in the way that makes the most sense, and like those might not always be the way we thought.
Exactly.
And like your app is the thing people want to use it for.
Yeah.
Right. And if no one wants to use it, that's a bigger problem. But like a lot of times, like somebody might use this instead of using it for code snippets. If all of my users come in and start storing their grocery lists inside of this,
right.
like that might not be what I originally designed it for, but it's definitely what the product's doing. Right. And like being able to come in and watch these and see how people are actually taking actions. And it becomes more useful on things like navigations, right? Like you might go through all this work to implement keyboard shortcuts, but you see people only go in and click in the UI anyways. And so like now, you know, like trend-wise, people aren't really using that at all. Like you can see how they're actually doing it. And like none of this is causing an error. So as far as like regular monitoring and being able to grab when something breaks, that's not capturing any of that. Like these are capturing user actions and how users are playing inside of your product.
Right. Makes total sense. Someone asked, do you have more YouTube tutorials on implementation and dashboarding?
We actually just added one that has a little bit more dashboarding functionality on it. I think either last week or the week before. Definitely check out Sentry's YouTube. There was one that Lazar on my team did that was specifically on dashboarding. That was a huge ad. There's another guide that we did. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick here. I'll send this link out. Yeah, so we did dashboarding setup inside of this guide. So I will save this and send it over. But this was part of our workshops. We run monthly workshops on setting up and using Sentry. And last month we did one where we came in and set up dashboards and how to actually use them. So this guide actually covers setting it up. Nice. So I'll share this out also.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That's
awesome.
Okay, we are at time.
We have 2 more questions. Let's see if we can just blow through real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, you kind of started to answer this, but or you mentioned one thing that is your favorite. What features do you find most valuable when working with Bolt, and why?
When I'm inside Bolt?
Which Sentry features?
Logs. Logs for sure. I use logs like a ton. Like, but it's not even like I love Sentry. Obviously, I work here. I'm a fan, but I use logs constantly. It's not even close. Mostly because like something like a replay, if I'm just testing here, like I'm working on my app, it's 2 in the morning and I'm hacking around. I'm seeing what I'm doing inside of the app, and so like it's not as useful to have a replay until I send it out to other people. But there's a lot of things that'll happen inside of the app that get cleared out like console log wise, that just console logs just fall apart. Especially when I start wiring up authentication, when I start wiring up database calls. Like we didn't do that because we're not set up. Next.js projects don't have like the Supabase integration, but I use the Supabase integration constantly. And like when I wanted to see what it's actually pulling in and what I might want to actually show in the app, I'll dump that stuff into logs. Like I use logs a ton. It's by far the number one. If I could get every one of you listening to this call right now to set up logs, I would feel great about it because it's just so useful.
Awesome. And then can Sentry auto-inject globally? Application logging of user journey or logger code snippet is always needed to be added manually.
If you use the inside of the AI guide, the AI guided flow that I shared before, there's an integration here for grabbing console log. This will grab all like logs that are sent in. It's not exactly like user journey stuff. That stuff's not implemented by default. You'll get breadcrumbs by default, meaning like where people click inside of your app, and that stuff's tracked as part of like replays. Excuse me. But as far as like more detail, you'll want to use logs for it. But with like the cool thing about using Bolt and the thing about using it is like going in and being able to say, I want to track my user interactions with Sentry logging minus the bad spelling. This would work, and especially when you paste in the text, like this would go and instrument it throughout the application pretty consistently. Claude's real smart about being able to like understand what this means and how to pull it in. So like use the natural language here to push that in and like include the code snippet, and it'll get you pretty far.
Awesome. Okay, great. And I'm going to add your Twitter handle here to the comments. Where else can people go if they have more questions?
Number one would be hit Sentry docs and use this Ask AI thing up top. It works surprisingly well. Drop me a message on Twitter. I don't like when people go and like flounder on questions by themselves. Like I think like as a community, we should be a lot more open to helping people along. And like, I think we can all remember times where we were helped along in the journey. So like, don't hesitate to drop me a message on Twitter or send me a DM or tag me in something. You can message me on Discord. I'm around there too. So like reach out. But if you want to go and search on your own, hang out in Docs. Docs is a good place. We do a lot of YouTube content. So like hit the Sentry YouTube channel and check out stuff there. You'll see videos from me and Lazar and people from my team. A lot of good content there. The Sentry blog is pretty technical. There's a lot of good content on there. All those are good places. And I'll send the link over for like this workshop guide because there's a lot of good information here on going in and setting up logs and setting up the dashboard view also.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to share one thing that went live while we were alive.
Ooh.
And,
Nice.
Have
surprise.
Let's see if I can do this. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. We have, this is epic image. Nightmare fuel, maybe. But we have 7 days left of the hackathon. So go to this thread, comment LFG for a chance to win. We're going to be doing some giveaways. So all this week, we're going to be doing some giveaways. I'm going to share this tweet in the chat here. But yeah, every day this week, we're going to be doing some giveaways. So follow us on Twitter if you're not already. And yeah, be on the lookout there. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, we're going to be going into user interfaces. So we will be back, us three, on this live stream here. I'm going to put the link for the events. There are remaining events and live streams going in the chat right here at river.to/bolt. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
See ya. Bye-bye.